In this video, I wanted to show you how I made these three collagraphs. They are mixed media, combination of painting with acrylic ink and using collagraph plates chopped up. Hope you enjoy the video. So what I wanted to show you is how you can further explore collagraph printmaking. You don't have to just be restricted to printmaking. You can use painting mixed together with calligraphy. Wonderful thing about acrylic media is that you can paint with acrylic media like ink, acrylic ink, and you can wait for it to dry, and then you can soak your paper and not be worried about the ink to be woken up by the water. So I painted a sort of image with acrylic ink using brush and pen, and I waited overnight and then I printed on top of it. This opens up a really exciting way of combining printmaking and painting, and I really hope that I will inspire you to try it out. It's really good fun and opens up lots of possibilities. I hope you enjoy the video. Images that are painted using acrylic ink and a tool that I made myself out of kebab stick, a Coke can or fizzy drink can, just attached to the kebab stick with a tape. And what I do is I just dip this into acrylic ink and draw on top of my printing paper. So I used black acrylic ink, and I used a combination of green acrylic ink, burnt umber, some red acrylic ink. I used plant pots as my inspiration, different type of plant pots from my house. Oh, and I've also used this iridescent bright gold fluid acrylic paint by Golden. So the idea is that I'm going to use these three papers as my base, and I'm going to soak these papers, and the idea is that because it's painted in acrylic, the acrylic has been dried overnight and it shouldn't be disturbed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to soak these papers and I'm going to print on them. And what I'm going to print on them is I'm going to create collagraph plates which will sort of compositionally fit with what I have done here, and I'm going to pick colors to complement my drawings. All right, so after much deliberation I have got my compositions set up. So I'm using a combination of collagraph, chopped up plates. I basically have a huge box of old plates. You can see how I made these plates in some of my previous videos, and I kind of thought a little bit about composition and what I would like to see happen. And also I used on each one of them a detail, a block sort of color detail that I'm planning to do, just using transparency plastic, like Perspex plastic. I've got one here, and hopefully you can see that I've got one here, and I've cut out one here. So just to explain, this one, I have an old collagraph plate that I made using mounting board, and I just basically cut into it, peeled it off, and used a bit of acrylic media to make it a bit more interesting and give it some textures. So I'm sort of thinking, okay, how is it going to look? Which way shall I do it? So there's some thought going into this. How is it going to look? To be honest, I have no idea how it's going to look at all until it actually comes out of the press, because it's all just one big experiment. But I want some stuff to be overlapping, and I want some contrast. So the reason why I chose this collagraph plate, because I thought, well, this picture, this drawing is quite loose and fluid, and to set a contrast against it, I chose something quite rigid. And I thought, you know, blocky, square colour, sort of rigid lines to contrast with my fluid drawing. And then a very blocky colour, a shape as well. So that should work really well with this composition. Now this one, I actually already happen to have this Perspex Sheets from my Robin Christmas card, if you've seen in my previous video. And these are really old collagraph plates I sort of made over a year ago, I think now, using some textures and some wood glue and carborundum here. And this one I used micaceous iron oxide and paintbrush, and I also used some patterns, some stenciling. I will make a video about collagraph printing at some point as well. Someone's asked me to do that, so you will see how I created this. But really the idea is just to create something interesting. This is a really old collagraph plate as well, using a wallpaper, textured wallpaper, and just cutting out shapes in it. And this one was using a wet strength tissue paper that was sort of crumpled on top of wood glue. So I've got this composition here. And my third one was again used very old collagraph plate. So this is my transparency. So this collagraph plate was made using aluminium foil, and I have a video dedicated to that as well. If you go back onto my channel, you'll be able to find it. And I have these peeled off shapes. So this is like a suggestion of trees. So I'm keeping it organic here. And I'm putting it upside down because obviously it will be printed that way. So I'm aware of that, I don't mess up. And I've got like a piece of cardboard really with very organic sort of shape here, created using micaceous oxide paint, micaceous iron oxide paint. So I've got some texture here that will trap ink. And I thought I'll do a round sort of shape, just something to contrast with my very sort of sharp edges here. And use a blocky colour as well. Haven't thought about colours yet, but that will come next. So in my first composition, I've decided to use contrasting colours. I'm going to use Peril Orange, which is very similar to the ink that I used, acrylic ink I used in my drawing. And I'm going to use Violet, Carbazole Violet, Aqua Intaglio ink, as well as Carbon Black. And what I'm going to do is, on my plate, I'm going to use viscosity inking technique. So I'm going to start off with Carbon Black and just apply the ink and wipe it off. Then I will add a diluted version of Violet using blending medium, and I'm going to sort of apply it in certain areas. Then I'm going to use orange, not diluted, just in its normal consistency, over the purple. So the purple, which is more diluted, will repel the orange. And I'm hoping to sort of end up with something similar to this. I made a print out of this plate before using viscosity inking technique. Okay, time to ink up the collagraph plate with Carbon Black. Now I'm blotting off excess ink with a bit of newsprint. Now I'm wiping off excess ink with a bit of newspaper. Now it's time to wipe off more ink using, and lastly polishing off the remaining bit of ink with some newspaper. And here I'm using a little bit of blending medium to make my violet ink a bit more loose. And now it's time to roll out the loosened ink. Okay, now it's time to roll the purple onto the collagraph plate. Okay, so now the orange is being mixed with Magi mix, which sort of thickens the ink a little bit. The reason why I'm doing it because this ink seems to be naturally runny. Just rolling the ink out and rolling it carefully onto the plate on top of the purple. And now for the last part, I'm just mixing orange with transparent base, Akua transparent base. So the ink is a little bit lighter color and transparent, and I'm just rolling it onto the shape. Okay, so I'm now ready to soak my ink drawing, and because it's done with acrylic ink, the water shouldn't wake it up. So I think I'm pretty safe here. I wouldn't even water it for too long, just enough time to soak up the paper. So now I'm just blotting excess water from the drawing, just with a bit of J cloth. It should be enough. Okay, so the drawing goes down onto the, and shortly I will be placing all of my bits like collagraph and monoprint onto the plate. Okay, so now it's time to carefully peel off the collagraph plate and the Perspex sheet. Well, just flipped this for you, and I've got to say, I really like what I'm seeing. The transparency of the orange circle shows really well the picture behind it, and I think compositionally it works really well. So here's composition number 2. So I started off with acrylic inks of gold and black. What I thought would complement those colors really well is a bit of burnt sienna, which I thought I will use this shape to create, and some Payne's grey, which I thought would be nice with this shape here. Some raw umber with Payne's grey maybe on this shape, and some phthalo blue on this shape here, and maybe black on this. So let's start with the black. Just brushing on here a bit of fluid phthalo blue aqua ink. Just preparing a bit of Akua burnt sienna ink, and then rolling it out. And now I'm just rolling it onto the plastic shape I'm going to monoprint onto my print. And here I'm inking up with burnt sienna, the second shape of the composition. And like in a previous print, I'm adding here a bit of Payne's grey ink just to add the variety to this shape. And this one is just simple Payne's grey. And the last shape, I'm just adding a bit of phthalo blue ink, just painting it on and gently rubbing it out with some newsprint. And I've decided last minute that I was going to apply a bit of burnt sienna on top, just to give it sort of two-dimensional feeling. And here is my painting on the press, and just arranging all the bits of Collagraph on top of my picture. Right, so now that all the shapes are more or less, as you can see, I can't decide where to put the last shape. And now that I have all of them placed, I'm just putting them through the press and just gently peeling them off with some tweezers to reveal the final picture. And it's looking pretty cool. Very pleased with it. So time for the third composition, and I've decided to go for Akua Phthalo Green, which should complement it nicely, and mixing it with perhaps a little bit of raw umber. So I'm going to ink up the top part of the plate with green and the bottom part with amber. Okay, so here I'm making a mixture of yellow with a tiny bit of black, carbon black, and mixing it with transparent base just to make it a little bit lighter. And I'm making this very light color and rolling it out really just to get a very sort of light, delicate, bright color for the plastic shape that I have prepared earlier. I'm just using the rest of that yellow and black mixture, and I'm just making it a little bit darker with a bit more black to ink up the round shape I have, the round Collagraph shape I have for this composition. And I've also decided to mix it up a little bit with burnt amber. So it's like a mixture of burnt amber and that sort of olive green. And here is the final stage of placing the pieces on a press, putting it through the press and then gently peeling them off. So here we go, the final shape is being revealed, and so far it's looking very interesting. I'm really rather pleased with all three actually. I was quite nervous that I was going to mess it up, but it's been a good day. Sometimes it just works out. So just seeing the final piece, and here we go. That mixture of painting and printmaking with this mixed media print is fabulous. Hope you enjoyed the video.